Okay, very well, guys. We're back on the second part. So we were talking about these different categories and ideas that they had for language, and how they didn't have a lot of more inflections and let's say presentations or categories of verbs um, for different words and etc. And I was saying that it was basically because they were sort of adapting into the language without a particular set of rules, right? So basically, that is what we have over there. Now, if we go into the next slide, it is the 14. We will see that there are many different words that we still use nowadays, and that were mostly introduced, or at least a form of them, or something like that, back at the time. One more time, if you take a look at all those words: water, earth, house, food, drink, sleep, all of those are basically related to basic needs. Yes, and some of the adjectives that we have over there mostly have to do with physical constitution. So you will see strong, or brave, or powerful, or things like that, right? Now that is something that is pretty important about the language, and many of the swearing words. I mean the bad words, yes, the rude words. Some of them, some of the ones that we have right now, were introduced back at the time, right? So if you take a look at this, the final part of the slide, the number 14, you have swearing words such as tits, or fart, or shit, or turd, or R's, that is like the British way of saying ass, right? Or peace. Now, why do you think? Why do you think that they were introduced back then? Well, sure, you're right, because we're talking about really rude bastards, right? Like we have these people who didn't really have a sense of education or good behavior, and they just live day by day, and they have all this aggressive behavior and all these different things. Now, something really interesting is that probably, if you think about it slowly and carefully, probably it was these uneducated brutes, the ones that introduced figures of speech, or some figures of speech, into the language, right? Why? How can a swearing word become a figure of speech? Well, because basically the swearing word represents something else, right? So if you're calling somebody marica in Spanish, are you really calling him like a homosexual? Well, I guess that depends on the context, no? But when you're calling a friend like that, you mean something different, right? If you pronounce the word shit, either in Spanish or in English, doesn't necessarily mean that there is excrement around you. What it might mean is that something bad happened, that you are angry, that you were surprised. Well, there are different things, right? Swearing words are polysemic. It means that they have different meanings, and they were the ones to introduce this into the language somehow. Of course, we cannot say that they were the first or the last of doing so, but they did really provide a really ample array of swearing words in order to be poetic, to provide a different sense to it, and that is why we can think about that. Now, let's talk about the themes, or the thematic of many of the literary productions of this time. So first of all, let's talk about the stories, or the presentation. So most of them were sagas. I think I have give me just a sec. I have a book over here. Be right back. So I have this collection of something that's called Icelandic sagas. I know that this is reversed in the video, but well, that is what it says. and you will see that many of them are somehow stories, right, that we have over here, and they start in, I don't know, in one page, and then in 2 or 3 pages they're over, right? Why? Well, these are short sagas, so mostly those were the ones who that were used by the fire just to entertain people, um, and just pass the time and socialize and things like that. This is in Spanish. I'm sorry, I don't have. Well, I do have one of those in English, but we were going to use it for another exercise. But I just want to read like a couple of them to you, 2 or 3, just the first lines, and you will see that they have many things in common, right? So, for example, this is called Breve de Sigurd de Borgafjord. So, short story of this guy. And it says, un verano vino a Islandia un hombre que se llamaba Grim. Era de familia islandesa, pero había estado mucho tiempo fuera. Era hombre del Hird del rey Olaf y durante un tiempo había sido un rey de proa. Grim era muy grande. Pasó el invierno en Islandia y el verano siguiente fue a la gran asamblea. So I didn't read you this story for any particular reason. I just opened the book and read like the first one that came into the page. And you will see that, first of all, the name is not figurative. It's pretty literal. The story of this guy, and they start like mentioning that, right? It's only a very short paragraph, and we already have a name. We already have the family. Yes, era de familia islandesa, but he was, let's say, like a servant of a particular king. It says era hombre del Hird del rey Olaf, and they talk about his profession, what he did. It says y durante un tiempo había sido su hombre de proa. So let's just do another one, yeah, whatever, yeah, and it says over here. Breve de Thorstein monta tienda. Again, another pretty literal title, not figurative at all. And it says, Ulf se llamaba un hombre que vivía en Telemark. Era Ersi. Vivía en Flilavfil en Tinsland. Su hijo se llamaba Asgrim. Estaba casado con Torkatla, a la que llamaban Torkatla Pecho. Asgrim heredó a su padre y era hombre de la mejor reputación. And then the story goes on. Now, what did you notice, guys? Legacy is really, really important for them. Yes, the Anglo-Saxons are really proud of their family inheritance. So they all the time are mentioning names. The name of my father, the name of my grandfather, the name of my family, my uncles, stuff like that. So that is a topic that is really important. Legacy, family. Yes, people who came before me. Actually, we have this strength or this tradition, and it has survived even in Iceland, in modern Iceland, until very few years ago, of having the last name after the name of my father and the word son, right? So it means that the word Anderson, yes, is the son of Ander. So if there is somebody who was called, I don't know, Jürgen Andersen, it means that his name was Jürgen, the son of Ander, right? So in that particular fashion, I should be called Diego Enriquenson, right? Like, because I am Diego, the son of Enrico. That's the name of my father. So it is so important that even a whole tradition of names and surnames and family names follow that particular thing, right? So that's why you see that when they are introducing each other, like, it takes forever, right? So for the ones of you who watch, for example, Game of Thrones, you might remember this from Daenerys Targaryen, and then there was a whole, bunch of names. Daenerys Targaryen, Stormborn, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, etc. Something like that, yeah? Like, they either talk about their names, and their family names, or whatever important thing that they did in the past that took them into the present. Yeah, something that they may happen to in the movie Gladiator, for example, right? he mentions like I am Maximus Decimus Meridius, like what is it like fighter of a killed someone, etc. So basically, the introduction and mentioning the things that they were doing and that they did before and people who came before is really important for them. So legacy, it's paramount for them. Now another topic that is really important is the exhibition of strength. Yes, physical prowess, the possibility of showing that you're strong, that you're brave. So if you find some literary piece that talks about somebody who's a good warrior, who is really brave, who faced unsurmountable odds, who faced a lot of enemies, who was able to do to survive in a battle that was very intense, well, that is most likely Anglo-Saxon, right? Now let's talk about the role of women. The role of women, as you can see, it was just basically a complete sexual object. Yeah, as I mentioned before, many of the conquered women were just raped and killed, and the ones who weren't, well, they were used as a reproductory machine. Yes, they were impregnated, and these new kids will become, the new members of their army or their clan or their group of people, right? So it was completely irrelevant. We are going to see some allusions to women in the literature of this time and the stories of this time, but mostly because they were like prizes, right? Like you see that many of them were alluded as being really beautiful and having very big breasts or very nice hips, not necessarily because they were sexy, but because it means that they could be good mothers. Yes, that they could give a lot of kids, provide a lot of children, and that they could feed them, right? That was like the perception. So the role of women was not really relevant at this point. Sadly, we are going to see that is going to last for centuries in the future, into the next period of literature. So that was it. Let's finish with this particular topic about the kennings, but I am going to do this in a different video so you can access it a little bit more easily if you're required to discuss only that part. Okay, so be right back, only with the kennings part. Okay.